And we are live. So, welcome to episode 144 of An American Werewolf in New Jersey. I am the American Werewolf. Today, we've got a special October double feature matinee sort of thing happening here at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And in the house tonight, I've got a returning guest, and I'm always happy to have her on. I've got Sydney from Cinema Cities podcast. Thank you for agreeing to this. It was a good sync, so to speak. You know, we both were talking about the same thing at the same time here now in the spooky season, and I was like, well, let's put it together. And you know, it was very cool. We couldn't do an evening, I think, but I was like, I could do an afternoon, and here we are. So
yeah, this is perfect.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Next week, I believe you're part of the cast that's going to join us when we cover some of the Universal classics, because this is the Halloween season. So we're going to be looking at Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, one day. We're going to be doing double features because they're so short. They're just a little over an hour, and 75 minutes is a long one. And then the next day, we're going to be looking at Karloff's The Mummy and Lugosi's Dracula. And then, you know, that's sufficiently spooky for Halloween. We've done a couple of the Marvel things here and there. They just released that Werewolf by Night that I thought was awful. And the new Hellraiser that I actually liked. I was very shocked. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, I really like this movie. Okay. But what I wanted to do was take a look at and deep dive. Not just into Universal, because Universal gets all the smoke. They take all the oxygen out of the room, and you know, everybody knows about Lugosi and Karloff and Chaney Jr. and Claude Rains and, you know, that usual cast of characters. And it's no slight to them. We were just talking about this before we went on the air. But the RKO pictures and their contribution to horror is just this is exactly what I was saying. I'm repeating myself essentially. It's at another level. These extraordinarily intellectual films with so much heart and so little spectacle. Just beautiful, beautiful story. Tragic, at times infuriating, and at times very scary, but just doing so much with so little. And we thought some of the best examples of that would be 1942's Cat People, and then 44's The Curse of the Cat People, and that's where we're at today. So if you're ready to go, shall we?
Let's go.
Boogie woogie. So rather than my usual spiel, which I've probably cut in half by regular standards, what drew you into the RKO phenomenon? What made you want to take a look at it, so on and so forth?
I think I've lived with these movies probably since I was around 10 or 11 years old. Okay. So I think I saw Cat People. No, actually, the first RKO horror movie I saw was actually The Seventh Victim, which is in the same Val Lewton cycle of films for RKO. And then Cat People, Curse of the Cat People, I Walked with the Zombie, Leopard Man. And then the ones, I haven't really revisited the ones he did with Karloff, but he has, you know, the three that he did with him. I've just sort of always known these movies.
Okay.
And I've always loved them, and I've always thought they were beautiful and horrifying.
They are. This is my first experience with Cat People and Curse of the Cat People. And Cat People are right now, for people in the stream or who are going to watch this on the replay, it's currently streaming on HBO Max. Curse of the Cat People, you have to rent. You have to rent it personally. But I was surprised because I was so impressed. I went instantly on Amazon, and these are still top dollar purchases. Like it's $40 to get the double feature on DVD.
Yeah.
To this day, they're still holding up in value. I mean, I own lots of the Universal stuff, but they're usually like $15, $19 for like the legacy sets, like all the Lugosi Dracula appearances and all the Frankensteins, you know, all on one thing. And yeah, these are something completely different. That's what I've realized. And I guess you mentioned him earlier. Tell us a little bit about Val Lewton. Your thoughts on the producer of all this.
He's a pretty extraordinary individual. So he was born in Ukraine. He was the nephew of Alla Nazimova, who is one of the greatest silent film stars out of American film. And she was also a great star on the stage. So he came over with his mom after his aunt Alla had come over. And he worked for a time as a writer. He worked for newspapers, and then he wrote some pulpy books in the 30s. And he ended up getting a job with David O. Selznick, you know, producer extraordinaire, King Kong, Gone with the Wind. And he was Selznick's story editor. He actually famously told Selznick that Gone with the Wind, don't film it because it's trash, because his standards were a little bit, he had higher literary standards. He wanted him to film War and Peace instead of Gone with the Wind.
That would have been better.
So Lewton is with Selznick for about 8 years, and he realizes that there's really nowhere else for him to go with Selznick. And RKO at the same time was pretty much hitting rock bottom financially because they financed Orson Welles' Citizen Kane and his follow-up, The Magnificent Ambersons, which, although classics at the time, literally almost bankrupted the studio.
Right.
So RKO was having this huge problem, like, we need to make money. And they're looking over at Universal, and they're seeing Universal making these B movies that are making tons of money, and they're horror. So, like, I think at the time Lewton was about to come over, The Wolfman had come out.
Yeah.
And it's a huge hit. And they're like, we need to do that. So, funny story is that they're at a party, and someone points out Val Lewton to an RKO exec. They're like, oh, that's Val Lewton. He writes horrible novels. And they thought they said horror novels instead of horrible, and find out he worked for Selznick. So he's brought on to RKO to make these B movie, hopefully hits for the studio. And he ends up doing that. And RKO basically was just like, hey, Val, here's what you've got. You've got $150,000. You've got 18 days, and we're going to give you the titles. After that, that's what you got to do. So they give him these titles that, you know, sound very pulpy. I Walk with a Zombie, Cat People, Leopard Man. And what he manages to do with those titles is craft these beautiful, literary, deep, allegorical stories that go way beyond what, I mean, obviously it's not what RKO is expecting, because they're expecting cat people.
The Wolfman. They're expecting the Wolfman.
Yeah. And he gives them something else, which, hey, after Cat People, which was a massive hit, they're like, you keep doing what you're doing. And so he does.
Yeah. Like I said, very light on spectacle.
Yeah.
Basically turning lemons into lemonade.
Yeah. Yeah. $150,000 and free reign of the RKO backlot and sets.
But you know something? I mean, aside from the salary of the writers, writing a good story is free.
Yeah.
That's all you need. I'm stunned after 100 years of cinema now. You know, we're looking at a full century. I think we're at a century of Murnau's Nosferatu. You know, and then a decade later, the talkies start. You know, in the 30s, and I think Todd Browning's Dracula is the first talking horror film. That people still haven't figured that out. That all you really need is a good story.
Yeah.
You don't. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and at a certain point also not overloading the audience and letting their imagination do some of the work.
It works every time.
Yeah.
It works every time. You know, less is more. And these are just magnificently crafted stories. And I saw some critics who said that this film is sort of a precursor maybe to Rosemary's Baby, which I love Rosemary's Baby. I think it's a fantastic film. I don't know that I necessarily saw the connection. A little bit.
Oh, I think maybe. You were talking about The Seventh Victim because it's got the devil worshippers.
Maybe yeah. I looked at it. Maybe I read it incorrectly.
It's got the New York City devil worshippers in The Seventh Victim, and I very much can see the connection between Rosemary's Baby and.
Now I'm going to have to make a list and start checking these off, and then catch as catch can try to find reasonably priced copies out there because you know, being very much a fan of physical media, I want these. You know, I don't want to have to wait on HBO, you know, to stream it for me. Although I was very lucky to have to be able to catch it. You know, the way that they were able to use light and shadow in scenes that, I mean, it's so simplistic. I wrote in my notes that it's so simplistic that you have to look at it with the right kind of eyes, because if you don't, it could be easy to say, well, this is boring, nothing's happening here.
Yeah.
But if you look at it with the right sort of maturity, let me say that everything is happening.
Yeah, I think there's a level of sophistication the viewer has to have.
Yeah. This isn't for your standard, you know, chop, you know, sloshy, you know, splatter fest kind of thing. This, especially by the time we got to the second movie, they're damn near art films. You've got, you know, themes of like, you know, introversion, you know, alienation, and, you know, would you say repression? Is that part of?
I would, for Irina, definitely, and then later with Amy, loneliness.
Yeah. The difficulties of having an unpopular child. You know,
and a child who finds more comfort in their imagination and themselves in their own interior world than they do with the outside world.
I'm the first person to start talking like a truck driver. But I adored that little kid.
Yeah,
she was just great. So sweet and so precious, you know, and you just wanted to say, leave her alone.
Yeah, let her
you know, be. Just leave her alone. You know, I don't like you from the first movie. So personally, I think you should have nothing to say in this movie. Just sit there in a corner and suck lemons, buddy. You know, just be quiet. I don't want to hear from either of you. So, I mean, it's incredibly understated. You've got this character, Irina Dubrovina, and she is just Simone Simon. Is that her real name? She's just this beautiful French actress who's playing a Serbian. And I was like, wow, okay, that's really interesting, because there is a lot of lore coming out of Eastern Europe. You know, a lot of horror lore, and you've got the Transylvania hangover and, you know, these sorts of things, and the, you know, the sort of exotic of Eastern Europe going on. And she comes over to the United States, and she is working as a sketch artist, and she seems very, you know, very happy and very even. She meets this guy named Ali. And you know, as her story starts to unfold, you know, you get into the history of her small town in Serbia, which at one point apparently historically fell under witchcraft or Satanism, which is told without any melodrama or anything like that. It's just, you know, sort of relayed in this matter-of-fact way that's very convincing. And that the king at that time, King John, a Christian king, came into that village, found out what was happening, and just sort of scorched earth the town or the village. And the only people to survive it were the people that were able to escape into the mountains, into the hills, so on and so forth. And so she is a descendant of those people that escaped, and she believes that she is, or that she has the ability. There's an inherent evil inside of her that she is able to sort of keep at bay. Which, if she becomes emotionally elevated, whether it's anger, or whether it's jealousy, or whether it's lust, in this case, with this guy Ali, then that's going to bring that part out of her. So she, sort of remains very even, while at the same time, meeting this guy Ali, who she ends up marrying. And it starts out as a very happy story. And then you find out throughout the course of the marriage that they're not consummating the marriage, because she's
on the wedding night.
Yeah, or on the wedding night, or in the coming months.
Right.
They do not consummate the marriage. And obviously that's a problem. And it's an interesting thing, because as a first-time viewer of this film, I started out, and understandably, seeing both points of view. She's got this sort of neurosis, and you understand that this is a horror film, so there's probably some truth into what she's saying. But then you understand the husband's point of view, because, he's not pushy about it, and he doesn't yell, and the dialogue is very even, and balanced, and they're not an arguing kind of couple. But the way the story unfolds, you can see the gap. You can almost see the distance between them start to expand. Like, there's that one scene, I think, where he's just pacing up in the room, and she's doing something at the desk, and you can almost see like an elephant in the room. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. And eventually, this is where I started to turn on Ali. He has a work colleague named Alice. And here's the thing, I get it, he's sort of, maybe he's grasping for some sort of affection or something. He's whatever he's not getting from his wife, I guess. He goes, even in a cursory sort of peripheral, kind of thing. But what ends up happening is, and this is where I thought, this is like a major strike. He ends up telling Alice all of the problems he's having with his wife. For Alice to then go back and repeat to Irina that and this is a picture of Alice here. So again, she's very attractive also. But, just for Alice to go back and repeat to Irina, she knows what's going on in their home and in their marriage. And I'm like, that's a major problem. Now, what's your opinion here? I mean, is he's wrong? Is it just that he's wrong, or, what's your opinion on Ali?
I think he was wrong to tell Alice all of their intimate business.
Yeah.
He could have. So he goes, I get why he goes to Alice, because that's how we get introduced to Dr. Judd. Because right. Alice recommends maybe Irina needs to talk to someone, which they say is a psychiatrist, psychoanalyst, or I don't know which one it is in this case.
I think it's a psychiatrist.
Psychiatrist. So he tells her so that we can get introduced to Dr. Judd. But they both make the mistake of letting Irina know that they've talked about her behind her back.
Yeah.
Which arouses all that sort of turns her into this sort of on Alice. Because I think up until that point, she has been friendly with Alice.
Yeah. And
at that point, she's like, begins to suspect Alice. Maybe the relationship between Ali and Alice is a little bit too close.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's not wrong.
No, she's not.
She's not wrong. And this is in his attempt to perhaps correct the problem, because I guess he decides this is the person I'm going to confide in. You would think that maybe he would go to one of his buddies, or something like that, and maybe you can see that because, guys talk to other guys. But I mean, you would have to see that this would be a huge red flag, to go to another woman, these sorts of things. But this is actually the catalyst that starts the emotional problem. This is what sort of starts to unhinge Irina.
Yeah.
She can live with the repression. She could live with the silence. She could live with the, maybe the, whatever's not being said with her husband, but she can't live with, because it must be humiliating.
And also, so it also is the thing that triggers, she's able to repress the sexual desire emotion, but she cannot suppress the jealousy, which is another emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it's the thing she doesn't see coming.
Right.
She figures as long as, we're sweet to each other and, we don't yell and, we come home to each other every night, and these sorts of things will be okay. And then maybe somewhere down the road, I mean, she's sort of kicking the can. You get the impression she's sort of kicking the can on this, we'll figure something out down the road. But it's the thing she doesn't see that starts the emotional sort of turmoil, and it's jealousy. Because Alice, while listening, really doesn't take long to start to stake a claim on Ollie.
Well, she lets Ollie know that she's always had feelings for him.
Well, I think pretty much by halfway through the movie, because this movie is only maybe an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's something like that. So you're about 30 minutes in, and she's already said she's in love with him.
Yeah, but he makes it clear to her at that point that he's all in on Irina.
Yeah, well, we see how that turns out. She's smarter than he is. He's not very bright. Ollie's not terribly bright. He's not a worldly guy or anything like that. He's not a playboy. With women left and right. So yeah, I mean, she's kind of staking her claim. She's not going anywhere. And you start to, and it isn't long before, and it isn't long before, Ollie tells Irina, I'll give you a divorce. I'm in love with Alice.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much. But now we're skipping over Dr. Judd.
Yes.
Tell us your thoughts on the good doctor.
I like Dr. Judd. He's kind of smarmy.
Really?
Yeah, he's smarmy, but the actor has so much charisma for me that I every time he's on screen, I'm just like, I really like Dr. Judd. I like his character. And Dr. Judd actually makes an appearance in The Seventh Victim as Dr. Judd.
Does he really?
I'm thinking that
must be a prequel.
It has to be a prequel because Dr. Judd he meets
I thought Dr. Judd was a creep.
Yeah, he's a creep, but I still liked him.
That's my thing, Everybody's got a thing, So, all right. I thought he was a stalker. I mean, didn't he follow her home one day? Like, you missed your appointment. So he's really intrusive.
Yes.
He's really like, there's no line with him.
And I don't know if it's attraction, curiosity, maybe a combination of the two.
Is it a sign of the times? Because, like, I remember last year we went to Fathom Events and we saw The Wolfman on the big screen for Halloween. We saw The Wolfman and we saw The Invisible Man. It was a double feature. So, big bucket of popcorn, sit down for 2 hours and 30 minutes. I mean, now you can watch one movie is 3 hours, and nobody blinks anymore. This was 2.5 hours. I think they had a 30-second pause between the two. And so you just sit down and you watch them, and they're great to watch. But I remember, when you see Cheney, he meets his love interest, and I can't remember her name, but he's spying on her through the telescope. And then he goes into the store, and he goes into her store, and I think it's Gwen. And Gwen Conliffe, that's it. It's Gwen Conliffe. That's her character's name. And then he goes into the store, and he tells her that he's spying on her. Oh, yeah, I was looking at you through your window with my telescope, and I'm just like, okay, maybe this is just a sign of the times and things that you could get away with at that time.
Also,
it's like John Wayne.
Well, they only have so many minutes. They got to get the meet cute in. like, hey, we've got to get this going because we've only got an hour and 10 minutes to wrap the story up. So you can't spend that much time establishing.
You're going to have to start stalking her. I'm sorry.
Yeah, like,
you're going to have to
go. Ollie throws the trash, or one of them throws the garbage, misses the garbage can, and next thing you know, Ollie and Irina are married. So it moves very quickly.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. I mean, and before you know it, Ollie and Irina are married, but then and 20 minutes later, Ollie and Irina are divorced. But I mean, we're talking about all this, and there's nothing paranormal that's happened yet. There's nothing supernatural that's happened yet. It's just a great story.
And there's those little bits, though, with Irina where, if you're watching closely, you see her sort of take on these feline characteristics. Like when she walks, like Ollie buys her a pet, he buys her a cat.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he buys her a cat, and the cat, he shows Alice the cat first. And Alice is all hugged up on the cat, and it's all sweet. Takes the cat home, and the cat is terrified of Irina.
Yeah.
So they're, okay, fine, we'll swap it out. So they go into the pet store.
Yeah.
And the second they open the door to walk into the pet store, every single animal in the entire place goes nuts. They're squawking, squealing, barking. And, the pet shop lady, she's all sweet. She's like, oh, some people, the animals just aren't into certain people. Irina walks out the door. Pets all calm down.
Yeah. And there's her attraction to that panther at the zoo.
Mm-hmm.
She can't stop checking. And like that scene where she goes behind the gate, just sort of fearlessly, and takes the key out of the, here,
Yeah, there's all these little suggestions of things. Like when she goes to play with the canary and she bats at the cage like a cat, and the canary dies.
Yeah.
When the bird dies, and then she wears that black fur coat, and it's like, you are looking like a cat, walking through town looking like a panther.
Now you compare this to like the Wolfman, where within 20 minutes Cheney's beaten Bela Lugosi to death with a club, who's turned into a supposed wolf. It looks more like a German Shepherd or something like that. That's his version of the Wolfman Lugosi's. But I mean, there's nothing like that here. There's nothing. There are no effects. In that way, and that movie is known for, the famous transformation, that they were doing at the time. There's none of that. It's just great storytelling. Amazing. Here's the thing. The pacing of things, like the shit starts to hit the fan when, I think there's one point where they all go to the museum together. And it's clear that Irina is the third wheel.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't want to show you that. You go do your thing, and me and Alice are going to go over here. And I'm like,
wow, we're going to look at these ships. Go somewhere else, Irina.
Like, yeah, we'll see you in like an hour. Yeah, and you're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
You're like, wow, that's just it looks like his wife.
Yeah.
She's still his wife at this point, but you can see he's clearly checked out. He is clearly checked out. And I, at this point, start to resent Ollie and Alice. Like I don't like them. Like I don't like that. Like that's just rude. One, you probably shouldn't be taking Alice at all. Two, you shouldn't. And I don't know. I sound like a male feminine. I don't know what I sound like right now saying this kind, but like it's like so blatantly obvious. You're like, holy shit, this is just awful. And that's what when the attacks start. And I just thought that they were genius.
Yeah.
When she's stalking Alice, who's walking down the street, and you just hear the fast pace of the clack of the heels, and then it just turns to silence. I mean, just fantastic.
And that scene also gives us like the first ever jump scare.
Yeah.
When
the bus.
When you kind of hear that growl underneath, and then the bus goes up.
Yeah, and you could see it's like right there in the trees, like right there on top of her. Like she had about 10 more seconds to live. And that would have been it. And that would have been fine with me.
Like, bye, Alice.
Yeah, bye, Alice. You know, and get Ollie after this too, because you know, I wrote in the tweet. You know, I'm like Team Irina here. But it's just, I mean, the transition from the growling to the bus pulling up, like I literally, like it jumped, it got me. I was like, holy shit, that was amazing. The swimming pool.
Yeah, that's my favorite. From the moment she goes down in that pool and turns the light off in the changing room, it's a great scene.
Yeah. I mean, just amazing. And the only place that she thinks is safe is the pool. Like she can just sit there and like get away from it and be in the middle of the water, and maybe that'll buy her enough of a buffer. The great thing about it, you never see anything.
Did you? I kind of thought I saw a shadow of a cat, but see, that could be my imagination. Like I saw it. Okay. I saw what could have been the shadow of a cat. And that's like so great. I'm like, was that a cat? I don't know.
Yeah.
Or was that just the shadow play? I have no idea. It's genius.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, this is a textbook. I mean, maybe of the highest order, but a textbook example of what you could do on a low budget with a great story.
Yeah.
You can still produce jump scares. You can still produce, you know, great performances. You know, and again, you know, I'm comparing this to the Wolfman, and it's no disrespect to the Wolfman. I love the Wolfman. But, you know, at this point, you know, Chaney was completely wolfed out.
Right.
You know, and like strangling people.
Right.
You know,
but I also think you know, the Wolfman's like a B movie. They're thinking this is what kids are going to go see. And that's what RKO is hoping to get from Lewton, you know, these B movies. And luckily for us, Cat People was such a hit that they let him keep doing what he was doing. And because they didn't get exactly what they wanted, they got something better.
None of those movies from Universal are muscular. They're not muscular performances. And when we talked about Browning's Dracula, that was I think that was the second episode we ever did. We talked about how, you know, so many of the actors were just coming off of the end of the silent film era. So they have this overly flamboyant, overacting kind of thing going on, like at all times. And it's the same when you look at Karloff and the Mummy, you know, and then you have Karloff, and then you have Lugosi, who are just, you know, like the alphas from like in every particular scene. They steal every scene because everyone else is just, ooh, you know, this kind of thing. 10 years later, you know, films have come a long way from 31 to 41, you know, and then to 42, to use this example. Yeah, I mean, you're not looking at a you know, it's a little, well, Chaney performances, you know, more stout, more robust, but there's none of that here. You know, it's just intellectual storytelling. And I remember years later when I was a teenager, and I never saw it since, the Kinski remake with Malcolm McDowell and
yeah, the Cat People.
Yeah, and I was kind of disappointed because I couldn't figure it out because it was strictly about having sex. I think it was strictly, if I remember correctly, because I'm not a Malcolm McDowell fan per se, but it was strictly about her wanting to avoid having sex. It wasn't about jealousy, if I remember correctly. And this is far better.
This is deeply psychological for 1942.
Yeah, you've got science versus religion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because then we start to be reintroduced to Dr. Judd again, you know, who threatens her with hospitalization,
which they kind of were like going to go along with.
Oh yeah, they were
Ollie and Alice were at this. Well, Alice was there, which whatever, but Ollie and Alice have that meeting with Dr. Judd, and they're talking about like, well, what are our options with Irina? Because they think that she's losing her mind.
Yeah.
So
this was the same in the Wolfman. Yeah. I mean, Claude Rains thought that his son was losing his mind. He straps him to a chair.
Right, but it's so much more ambiguous in Cat People. There's like, wait, is she turning into a cat, or is she? What's happening here? So they think she's losing her mind. So they're like, well, here are your options, Ollie. You can divorce her, and it's not your problem, or if you stay married to her and have her committed, you can never divorce her because you can't divorce a person who's in an insane asylum.
Yeah, and that particular piece of advice was like something out of Game of Thrones. That was just so nihilistic and like self-serving, because if you do the right thing by her, which, might be hospitalization, even though it's awful, then you're stuck with her.
Right.
And you're just like, wow, that's awful.
But to Ollie's credit, he's like, I'm not going to abandon her.
Yeah. Kind of, sort of. Yeah, I mean, Alice, almost gets it. And then she goes after them both, doesn't she?
Yeah, in their office, which is a great, I mean, talk about film noir before there was film noir, before noir was a thing. That scene with the light tables from their drafting tables and the reflections and the shadows. Great.
Yeah. In the name of God, leave us alone.
Yeah.
And you're just like, wow, this is like the highest. I think this is like one of my now all-time favorites. Well, the second movie. The first one, this one here, damn good. But it was just disappointing in that I kind of wanted Irina to just take them all out.
Like, just finish the job, Irina.
Yeah, please, can you do a little Wolverine here or something, and just just kind of then just walk off. The good news is that Dr. Judd does get his just desserts here, and it will be troubling us no more because he's a manipulative little shit.
Yeah.
Where he hides his walking stick under the couch so he can go back and jangle the door so he can get himself back in later. He's not a good guy. Dr. Judd is not a good guy. And maybe I'm just looking at this through the lens of 2022. I'm curious as to how you think these characters were portrayed or viewed in 1942. Is Irina, the villain? Is Dr. Judd looked at as a good guy?
I probably think Dr. Judd was probably looked at as a smarmy, scheming character because that's the way he comes off in the. He comes off a little bit more sympathetic in The Seventh Victim, but he's still scheming and smarmy in that one as well. And I think Irina is sympathetic. I mean, I think that's just universal. She's a sympathetic character. I don't think she's ever seen as a villain.
Well, I mean, and then Dr. Judd goes so far as to, because he hits on Irina before. What if I were to kiss you? And I'm like, what the fuck? What kind of psychiatrist are you? What the hell's going on? And then he lays a smooch on her. And I recognize what you said about the feline thing. The look on her face. It's just the eyes, but like the facial expression is just blank. And yeah, Dr. Judd isn't long for it after that, thank goodness. I mean, that was one good thing that came out of this movie. Fucking Dr. Judd. And then she, I guess in her guilt, and that's one of the things that continues to make her a sympathetic character is that she never fully gives over to that wild side.
Yeah.
There's clearly a lot of remorse for her, sort of that, that lizard part of the brain that's taking over, and then, when she comes back to being Irina again, she's clearly, upset, about what she's done. But she can't help herself,
and she knows that. She knows she can't help it.
Yeah, and in that there are parallels to the Wolfman. It's the same sort of thing where the guy just afterwards feels awful about the things that he's done, but there's no stopping it. And that, as they say, is that. And then, I think unfortunately in her attack on Dr. Judd, she ends up getting stabbed with the cane.
Yeah,
which is just awful. It's there's that scene where the piece of the cane is sticking out of her.
And I mean, it's all foreshadowed though from the very beginning because we see that cat on the staff that's been speared.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm gonna have to watch this. See, I'm gonna have to watch this again.
This is one of those movies that upon further viewing, it becomes so much more richer because then you're seeing little things like, oh, I get it. Oh, wow.
Okay, because I'm sure HBO is going to drop it after Halloween. I'm gonna have to catch it again. I'm gonna have to catch it again before we go back. Wow. Okay. I'm just gonna have to buy them. What the hell with it? I'm gonna have to buy them. But yeah, I mean, Dr. Judd gets it. Irina dies. The panther in the cage gets run over.
Yeah.
Which is really kind of rough. You see the tire track on the cat.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, whoa, okay, they're kind of going for it here. And, you know, that is true throughout the film. You know, these filmmakers are really going for it here. But not in a, you know, in a universal style. You know, not in that kind of, in a very understated way. And it reminded me of the Wolfman. It reminded me of kind of King Kong, in that by the end of it, I found everyone else contemptible. Like I find Claude Rains contemptible in the Wolfman. You know, and his comeuppance of sorts, well, not of sorts, is that he has to beat his own son to death.
Yeah.
You know, the Barker character from King Kong, who, you know, orders him to be dragged over there. You know, and then, you know, oh, it was beauty. You know, he just like takes no responsibility.
Yeah.
You know, and then just kind of walks. I can't watch any version of King Kong unless it's this latest Skull Island thing. I can't, because it just makes me angry at like everybody. I just like hate the world when I watch a King Kong movie. Hold on a second. Hey, we got Walk the Cinema podcast. They're in here tonight. What's up, you two? And they said we got to watch these two again too. Yeah, they're fantastic. You should cover them on your show. The first one is on HBO Max right now, if you have that. But the second one, it isn't streaming anywhere. You have to. I got a $2.99 rental. Yeah, $2.99.
It's worth your $2.99 though.
It's absolutely worth your $2.99. It's only a shame that they let you keep it for 48 hours, because I don't know that I would watch it twice in 48 hours. But it's damn good. And so it ends on a very dissatisfying note for me. Irina's dead.
Yeah, it ends very darkly.
Yeah, it's not a happy ending. Much more tragic than The Wolfman.
But these are themes. These are themes of all Lewton's films, for the most part. There are these dark stories. They're always kind of, well, they're always definitely melancholy. Some of them are more melancholy than others. Tragic, moody. I love it. I love it so much. And in contrast to the Universal movies, these are set in like cities and places where people go to work, and in urban apartment buildings. Like these are very American. They're not set in these villages in some Eastern European town.
It's not in Transylvania,
right?
You know, or or some weird place, you know, where you know gypsies come to hang out for like a month and, you know, be your town's entertainment or something.
Yeah, they're very believable stories.
Yeah, yeah, and so, you know. And that's another thing with alienation, is that, you know, Irina moving from Serbia to the United States has no one. There is one scene where she's at a restaurant and they take her to a Serbian restaurant.
Yeah, and that lady says,
are you what I think you?
It's like my sister.
Yeah, you know, and so she has no one to relate to. You know, she has, you know, no friends, no girlfriends, no, you know, brother, you know, there's nobody there who supports her and like her cultural, you know, sort of understanding of things, you know, and, you know, maybe, marry a nice Serbian guy, you know, and, you know, try to figure it out from there, that kind of thing. But that was a spooky scene.
Yeah.
That was a spooky scene.
That was the day of the night of their wedding celebration, their wedding reception at the Serbian restaurant. And it's a really pretty scene. It's snowing outside, that movie snow, and everyone's celebrating. And then this woman who looks like a cat, it's Elizabeth Russell, who is in a lot of Val Lewton movies, part of his sort of stock actors that he uses. Her cheekbones are so chiseled, and her eyes, you know, she looks like a cat. And she comes up and just looks at her and says, "My sister," in Serbian, and it scares the crap out of Irina, and it kills the mood of the entire party.
Yeah. Serbia hits differently today for me, because, you know, what we know of Serbia in the 90s.
Yeah.
You know, and you associate it with the war. And if you get a chance to see the new Hellraiser movie that's on Hulu, it starts off in modern day Serbia. And I was like, oh, wow, that's an interesting place to, to start, because the images that, the thoughts that come to mind when you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is a really grim place. It's probably still got a lot of the specter of the war hanging over it, these sorts of things. And so, oh, you're a Serbian. Oh, okay. I think automatically that this is kind of a rough place, which actually turns out to be the case. Walk the Cinema says, oh, we covered the first one last year. Get to the second one. Please cover the second one. So is there anything you wanted to add from the first? Anything that we missed?
I might want to comment on the sort of character actors that fill in the spaces around the leads. They're just little bitty parts, like the woman, the little bitty parts around the lead. So you've got like the lady in the restaurant. She's
Minnie.
Yeah.
And Minnie, yeah, the waitress, yeah.
Yeah, the Minnie.
Nobody wants a chicken gumbo.
Nobody wants the gumbo, And then the woman who's scrubbing the floor at the office with the cigarette hanging out of her mouth, ashing on herself, like all these little bitty, but they're so alive. They're little tiny parts, and they're not on screen for very long, but they help make the whole thing like textured and feel more real.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I really liked Minnie. And I like that lady just kind of scrubbing the floors. She looks like like somebody who's been laboring for a long time. She hasn't got a glamorous look or anything like that. You got some, beauty down there scrubbing the floors. Yeah. You're like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. You've got someone who looks like they've been putting in work their whole life. It adds a lot of authenticity to it. By the time we get to the second movie and you get to Edward, played by Sir Lancelot.
Yeah.
The Trinidad, the guy from Trinidad. He was just great.
Yeah, he's also in I Walked with a Zombie.
Okay. I'm going to have to. I was looking. I'm trying to find some sort of box set, but RKO just doesn't have anything.
There was a Val Lewton box set. I have like 2 of the movies from it that includes Seventh Victim and a Lewton documentary, but the box set now is like $150. But it was like the complete films.
I saw it on eBay for $500.
Oh, geez. So it's gone up in like the last.
Yeah. I don't know what's happened that these things have become so, because like I said, you can get Universal films for, a couple of pennies.
Yeah.
And like the entire, like you get the entire Dracula, all of the Frankenstein. They're like $15-20 a piece. But for some reason, Okay, so we get to the second movie, The Curse of the Cat People, and it was not at all what I was expecting.
You are RKO.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess I am. Jeez. I was floored. I was just floored because I was expecting, I was like, well, okay, how are they going to bring back Irina? Because I saw the casting, and Ali and Alice are back, and I wasn't thrilled about that. And, I saw that, Irina was back. I'm like, how is this going to work? And it may have moved into my top 5 all-time favorite films, just off of a $2.99 rental that I performed last night. It's just beautiful. It's just a beautiful film to watch. And it is set probably maybe 10 years in the future, even though it came out like 2 years after Cat People.
Yeah, I think it's like sort of indeterminate. All we know is that the little girl is like 6 years old.
Okay, she's 6. I was going to say closer to 8 or something like that. Okay, so, all right, a number of years have gone by, and Ali and Alice are married, and they've got a house and a white picket fence, and they've got a little daughter named Amy. And Amy is sort of she's a friendly, it's not like a creepy kind of omen kid, who never says. She's just a sweet little girl, but she doesn't get along with the other kids, and the other kids think she's weird.
They think she's kind of flaky and weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's funny because the kids who think that end up being the biggest shits.
Yeah.
The kids that are name calling her and, we don't want to, she's just weird and she's dreaming. They turn out to be the biggest assholes, which is always the case. But I mean, she's just kind-hearted. And, she's in school and, I'm going to give you a teacher says I'm going to, and they live in, they're living in Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
I thought that was fantastic to set that in modern day or 1950s, whatever, Sleepy Hollow, home of the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Washington Irving's story, and the Headless Horseman and all these sorts of things. And she's out playing, and she's just such a cute kid. She's such a cute little kid, and she's out playing, and she's trying to catch a butterfly, and you can see it coming. There's this boy. I'll help you get it. And he smashes the butterfly with his hat in typical 6 or 7 year old or 8 year old boy fashion. And he hands it to her, and the butterfly is just in pieces.
Then she smacks him.
Her response is just so great. She just slaps him right in the face. And the boy's looking at her like, what? What did I do? I got you the butterfly. It's just a perfect example of the contrast between boys and girls at that age. I mean, I actually taught 3rd grade once, and that's exactly what it is, And that brings in the parents, and this concern that she's always daydreaming, and, she doesn't have any friends, and, like.
She's lonely.
Yeah, and you don't get that impression.
No, you get the impression that she's perfectly content being the way that she is. She is not striving to make friends with the other kids in her class. And I wouldn't encourage that either, because they are little jerks. So she's fine. She's doing fine on her own. Yeah,
but of course, parents, no offense, but there's that old saying, parents always find a way to make it worse. And she needs to stop being, so, quiet, and they're trying to force her to have friends.
Yeah, to be less dreamy.
Yeah, and somehow, like, are Ollie and Alice supposed to be? I didn't see them as the good guys. Now, maybe that's just because I had a hangover from seeing the first movie.
I think Alice is more sympathetic.
Yes.
In this one, Ollie, I think the point with Ollie was that he was worried about Irina, like Amy sort of going the way Irina went, being too much in her head, worried about things that aren't real, or focusing too much on things that aren't real.
Which was funny, because isn't he convinced at the end of he didn't see any of it. So he believes that was just all in her head. Is that what you took away from the first film? He didn't see it.
I think he thought she needed help. I think he thought it was all in her head.
Okay, so that carries through to the end of the film.
In the office, when they're worried when they're scared, there's I don't know. Maybe they haven't processed what happened to them.
I think that's much closer to the truth. Yeah. They don't want to talk about it.
They don't want to believe what might have been something supernatural occurring. It's just easier just to pretend that she was crazy.
Yeah, and that was what I wrote in the notes, that the specter of Irina still lives with them.
Yeah.
And they don't want to talk about it. They want to pretend that everything is fine, and that they didn't have this, huge paranormal, experience that ended up getting someone killed and almost got them killed.
Yeah. Yet they have that painting in their house, like in their living room.
Yeah. She's living rent free in their head.
Yeah.
Irina lives rent free because they wronged her also. And I think that they sort of view her sympathetically, but they don't acknowledge their own culpability. And I think that's also what causes Ollie to double down on Amy.
I think so too.
He doesn't want to acknowledge that he was an asshole, and sort of did that to his wife. Because, I mean, if you were to ask Ollie and Alice how they met, what would they say? How did you guys meet?
We met at work.
Yeah, exactly. It's, I was, coming on to him while he was married to somebody else. They can't say that. So there's like this huge, silence that goes on. But, they've got this kid, and I thought it was so great that, she's going to have a birthday party, and, it's going to be fun, and, all these different things. And then turns out Amy didn't put the invitations in the mailbox. She put it in the magic mailbox.
Didn't that scene sort of subvert what you were expecting to happen. So like I was expecting the first time I saw it that, oh, these kids are just jerks and they don't want to come to Amy's party because she's waiting for all these kids to show up at their birthday party and no one's coming. It's like, oh my gosh, they don't like her so much that none of them are coming to her birthday party. But it turns out her dad told her a story that the oak tree like was a magic mailbox. So she took the invitations and put them in the magic mailbox, which is like sad and sweet at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, that actually endeared me to her even more.
Yeah.
She's like, what do you mean nobody's coming? I put him in the mail. She's like, no, that's not, and, initially while he's concerned, he sort of comes across as, understanding. And he's like, okay, we're going to have a party. So we're going to have a party, and she has a good time. And, and then she blows out the candles. And her wish when she blows out the candles is that she's going to start making friends again and she's going to, stop daydreaming. And it was just so sad.
Yeah.
I found that to be profoundly sad. And again, absolutely nothing paranormal happening. Absolutely nothing supernatural. No blood, no screams, none of that, which makes the value of when it does happen that much more powerful. It's like a person who never curses, dropping an F-bomb or something. You're like, oh, okay. This is somewhat serious. Okay, we've got a problem here. And then we get to the Farron house where she starts because you can see that, she's going to go out and, make good on her promise to her father and her wish. And the kids don't want anything to do with it. And so they get to this house, and I loved Mrs. Farron.
Yeah, Mrs. Farron's great. She's creepy and kooky, and
she's everything you want in a neighbor.
Yeah. But also like generous and kind too.
Yeah. She's kind of like a shut-in. Like she doesn't go anywhere or anything like that, and gives her this ring, which is a wishing ring, and. Next thing you know, Amy is wishing for a friend. And that's where we end up bringing Irina back into the picture. And it's just so well done. And it's just such an original idea that she really is like the specter, like overhanging that house, but not in the way that you would think. Not in some menacing way.
Right.
She
she's
almost
not
is like
vengeful. She's not like the vengeful ghosts come back or any of that. She's just like
she's
gentle, motherly type figure.
She's like a guardian angel.
Yes.
She's become the guardian angel, and that just solidified, all the feelings I had about the first movie. That's what I was saying before we went on, that I felt that was validated. Mm-hmm. And she's just so damn beautiful, I mean, I was like, holy shit, like she's really, because French women have a particular look to them. And she embraces, Amy, as this friend, as this protector, saying that she comes from a dark place, but it's not a bad place. I can't remember exactly how she phrases it.
It's a dark place, but peaceful. That's what she said.
Yeah, dark but peaceful.
Yeah.
And she, for all of her conflict in the first movie, is now in a better place than the two people who lived. Go ahead. I'm talking too much.
Oh, the backyard, for the small amount of money that they had in this movie, that backyard that goes from like fall into winter is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And even the entire town, I don't know if I'm assuming it's RKO backlot, but luckily they're able to use these things built for other movies so that they don't have to, use their budget on it. And they use it to such great effect because the production design on this is just, it kind of makes you feel like you're in a bit of a fairy tale world.
Yeah. Yeah. It turns into some sort of fantasy.
Yeah.
It turns into like a fantasy tale. And the way she just calls her my friend. Amy's performance, where she just keeps repeating my friend, my friend, and, the way Irina says, I've wanted a friend too, You know, I've just, you know, I've been, I guess wherever it is, you know, I've been lonely, you know, these sorts of things. She's fantastic. And it's just such an original way to reintroduce her back into the story, because I was expecting, you know, like Poltergeist. You know, I was expecting, you know, come around the corner, you know, Ali, you're an asshole, you know, I'm going to get you, you know, that kind of thing. And she's kind of risen above it, you know, and her only interest is to be this child's friend. It's fantastic. It's so much more meaningful than a vampire story or a werewolf story. It's, you know, just simply the story of this, you know, this kind of awkward kid, you know, who finds a friend. Amazing. I think it was an hour and 9 minutes, and I just glued myself to the screen for an hour and 9 minutes, and it was just breathtaking. It was breathtaking. By the end of it, I still had no affection for Ali or Alice. Well, Alice a little bit.
Alice is a little bit better.
Yeah, Ali. Yeah, Ali is like, do you see her? Yeah, then I see her too. You're not even looking, asshole.
Yeah, I have more sympathy for Mrs. Farron's daughter.
Yeah, Mrs. Farron's daughter. You know, the imposter. Yeah, I love the way my daughter's been dead since she was 6. You know, you're not my daughter. You're an imposter. You know, stop it.
But is she an imposter? It's never cleared up. We don't know. She could be.
I get the impression that she's a ghost. She's another, that she lives in the house with maybe the specter of her daughter, you know, or something. Because, you know, it's sort of an angry specter, unlike Irina, you know, who's just kind of reconciled and was never a bad person to begin with. But the person that Mrs. Farron is living with is not, and wants to hurt Amy.
Yeah,
and
but
you know,
at the end she doesn't.
Well, I think it's because Irina stops her.
Yeah.
Irina stops her, and then she just, because there's that shot with the hands.
Oh, those hands, and they're so creepy too. The way they wrap around the head.
Yeah, they don't look like kind hands or anything like that. You know, they look, you know,
like a strangler.
Yeah, and then, you know, it just kind of, you know, she kind of levels out, and that's when the grown-ups come back in, and, you know, the movie kind of ends there. But I think I actually liked the second movie better than the first one.
I like the second movie better than the first one.
Yeah.
And I like the first one a lot, so.
Yeah. Same here. And maybe, you know, like I said, at piecemeal, I'll see about trying to get these into my collection.
Yeah, but you know how you said you weren't expecting what you got. I mean, you know, when RKO told them the next title is Curse of the Cat People, they were not expecting a sort of gentle childhood fantasy fairy tale story. They were expecting cat people coming back and slashing up people.
Yeah, Irina's brother, you know, this time it's personal. Yeah. You know, this kind of thing, you know, I want my sister. Give me my sister, you know, these kinds of things. You know, it's like a Rocky movie. But, yeah, I mean, wow. I mean, you know, and my first episode of this show was January 21 or something like that. And it was Karloff's The Mummy. And I was just saying what an understated performance Karloff gave in that movie where he plays Imhotep. But this is levels above that. This is a completely different thing. You know, and I've sort of broken things down into like 3 categories. You know, you have art, you know, up there at the top. You have entertainment, you know, sort of in the middle, which is probably where most things fit under. And then, you know, at the bottom, you just have content, you know, that kind of thing. But I mean, both of these clearly in the first category, at least for me. Fantastic. Did you want to, was there anything about the second one you wanted to, I'm not sure, because I don't know how many people have seen this. I would be willing to venture probably not that many.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I want to
spoil it.
Yeah, get into too much, especially if they're available to stream right now and for $2.99. You know, like if we can get one, like Walk the Cinema, I was glad to see that. But if we can get, you know, a couple of people to, you know, to check it out, that would be cool. Is there anything you wanted to address about the second one that
maybe
we didn't?
It has 2 director credits for this movie, and gosh, the name of the initial director just escapes me right now. But he was taking too long. You know, they've only got so many days, and I think they had a 22-day shooting schedule, and he'd only gone through half of the film by the time they got to the 22nd day. So they brought in Robert Wise, who had edited all of the previous Val Lewton films, as the director on this one. And that sort of jump-started Robert Wise, you know, Sound of Music, The Haunting, Robert Wise, to his directing career. That was his first film. I don't know how much credit he can get for style and tone for this film, but he came in as the person to get it done.
Okay. And he did.
Yeah, and he did.
And he gave us a completely different film. Well, the 2 of them together.
Yeah, the 2 of them together.
A completely different film. Very bold. Very bold. It would have been so easy, you know, like Universal to just, or any other, you know, horror, you know, movie to come back with more of the same. This time, you know, and usually when you get, what's that thing, Sturgeon's Law, you know, 9 out of 10 things usually kind of suck. And so by the time you get to sequels, so you think about any movie, you know, sci-fi, you rarely get a Terminator and, you know, or an Alien or whatever. But then when you get to sequels, you got to think, well, 9 out of 10 sequels usually, if you follow that, you know, that methodology, are usually stinkers.
Yeah, this one I think is better than the original.
Yeah, that's very rare. That's extremely rare.
Yeah, it's The Godfather 2.
Rare. Yeah, maybe Terminator 2, more along the sci-fi horror, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, The Empire Strikes Back. You know, it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, Ouija, Origin of Evil.
Oh man, I love Mike Flanagan. I love Mike Flanagan. He's got the Fall of the House of Usher coming.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm very excited.
He just wrapped production, so that's going to be something to look forward to. I'm definitely going to cover that. I'm going to cover that when it comes out. So I guess we're at the point in the film where we rate the movie, or in this case, movies. I don't know if you've been here since we started doing that. I have a system from 0 to 5. 0 being I'd rather stick my fingers under a moving lawnmower than watch this movie again. And then we go 0.5, 1, 1.5, all the way up to 5. 5 being this is the destination. This is why people should be making film. You know, this is it. Take both movies. What would you give both movies? First one, then the other.
I would give them both 5 stars. Because, I mean, if I was comparing the 2, 4.5 for Cat People, 5 for Curse of the Cat People. But if you're taking them together as like a whole, if you're going to sit down and watch them both, 5 stars.
I am going to go with what you said, 4.5 for the first, 5 for the second.
Yeah.
Because I literally sat down and watched both of these back to back. And I got to the second movie and I'm like, this is way better.
Yeah.
I don't understand how it's better, but it is. Like, this is amazing. You know, and yeah, I mean,
that little girl carries that movie, and she does a great job. Ann Carter, great little actress.
Well, and then Irina also carries it because
the way the 2 of them are together.
Yeah, and it's a different presentation of Irina.
Yeah.
You know, it's not neurotic, worried, angry Irina. This really is like a guardian angel. You know, and she just plays it so perfectly. And like with the shot, you know, with, like you said, you know, here where she's in the shawl, you know, and she just, you know, she's dressed up like that. She really does look like, you know, you're like, holy shit, you know, she really is like a guardian angel here. And yeah, so I would go 4.5 and then 5. Amazing. Amazing. They don't make them like this anymore. No, they don't. Tell people where they can find your content, Sydney. I'm going to put the link to your channel in the description as soon as we break off from here. So. Oh
yeah, my YouTube channel is Cinema Cities. I actually just did a video on Val Lewton. So I was up on my Lewton stories, which is about the 7th victim and Val Lewton and RKO Horror. And then also I hang out on Twitter at Cities1978.
Okay. Okay. And your channel covers what type of content? What do you tell people what you talk about?
Well, it's October, so I've been doing a lot of horror movies. So this past month, I've been focusing on just moody, melancholy horror. But usually, my channel is basically moody, melancholy movies. This is what it's turning into.
Okay. All right, we got the Agoraphobe. What's up, man? And he says, I've always really liked the Leopard Man from Lewton. So I'm going to have to check those out.
Oh, yeah, that's got some good kills in it, too. Like,
okay.
Scary moments.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Have you got anything you want to plug? Anything coming up? You just released your Lewton video,
yeah,
so let people check that out. Okay.
Yeah, so that's my most recent.
Okay. For me, at the end of this week, hopefully by tomorrow, actually, I will have dropped a review of a movie that I think is maybe the best science fiction movie of the past 20 years, Brandon Cronenberg's Possessor. And it's stunningly good. It's unbelievable. I mean, maybe the most original story I've heard of in an extremely long time. It's apples and oranges from this, but it's just fantastic. So I'm going to be dropping that. And then next week, we'll be back with the Universal double features back to back. So we'll be doing that. And hopefully you'll join us for some of those.
Hopefully. I'm trying to work it in.
Okay. All right. All right. My thanks to everybody in the chat, Walk the Cinema, to the Agoraphobe, and my thanks to Sydney from Cinema Cities that we were able to put this together and talk some RKO, because nobody else is talking RKO. That I've seen out there. And it's now having seen these are criminally overlooked films. So my thanks to you. I hope to see you again next week. And take care, everybody. A couple more days till Halloween. Have some fun out there. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, always.